The quality of your life depends on the quality of the questions you ask yourself, the quality of the questions you're willing to ask yourself. But even more than that, the quality of the truth of the answers that you're willing to give yourself based on those questions. So often we just float along in our lives in default mode, trying to just get through our day and to pass up everything that we can as quickly as we possibly can so we can get on to the next. The modern chaos of the way that we live, from work to social media to our families to our children to ourselves, winds up leaving little time for us to actually proactively think about ourselves. We don't ask ourselves questions. We just react. And so knowing that the quality of your life depends on the quality of the questions that you're willing to ask yourself and the quality of the truth that you're willing to give in the answer to those questions, which is a big part of it. The question becomes, why aren't you asking yourself more questions? There's a lot of question marks in the statement that I just made, but it's worth it. Because in reality, there are three fundamental questions that if you ask yourself these and are genuinely truthful with yourself about the answers, there's an instant upgrade for your entire life. The first question I want you to ask yourself is, what do I want? Now, at first, when you hear that question, you might think it's an easy answer. You might think, of course I know what I want. Who doesn't know what they want? But my bet is if I was sitting across the table from you and I asked you that question and you had to answer me right there, first things out of your mouth would be a list of 5 to 10 things that you don't want. Don't want to drive the same car, don't want to live in the same house, don't want to have the same body, don't want to eat at the same restaurants, and some of you don't want to be married to the same person. Those are all the things you don't want, and I can appreciate that. There's value in understanding what you don't want, but when the question is, what do you want? It's like a blank check. So it becomes difficult to answer. And it becomes difficult to stand in the truth of your answer because there are things that you think you should want versus things that you actually do want. And so if you can get yourself to a spot where I understand exactly what I want, that gives you the ability to actually go get it. See, the way that our minds work is if we're not crystal clear on what we're trying to get, we procrastinate. One of the giant reasons people procrastinate is simply because they're unclear on where they're going, and it makes sense. Why would you act if you knew that it wasn't really going to go anywhere, or you weren't sure where it was going to go? It's easy to tell yourself that you'll do it later because there was no place that you were actually going anywhere. So take the time to get crystal clear on what you want in your life. And the best way that I've found to go about doing this is actually picking up a journal and just writing in it. I didn't journal for so many years out of my life, but once I started journaling and writing down my thoughts and writing down my feelings, it helped shape them and it helped give them clarity. And it'll do the exact same thing for you. So that question, plus the other two I'm going to give you, go write them down. If you don't have a journal, that's fine. You can use a piece of paper. It doesn't really make a difference. But what does make a difference is that you find a quiet spot where you can sit to just write for 20 to 25 minutes on each one of these questions. The second in the life-changing question is, what's the real obstacle between me and what I really want? Presuming you already got clear on what it is you want, the next thing you need to understand and figure out is what's really blocking you from getting it. Now, very easily, you're going to come up with a number of things that will be stopping you from getting it, whether it's your time or your motivation or the fact that you just can't make any big changes right now. Whatever your stories are at the first level, you've got to dive deeper than that to understand what's truly in the way. A lot of times we look at change and we look at transformation and we look at it in a very optimistic way, which we have to do because it requires optimism to believe that transformation and change inside of yourself and inside of your life is something that's possible for you. But what we rarely look at is we rarely look at the downside in understanding what the true obstacles are. It might be a skill, it might be a trait, it might be a belief. Whatever the obstacle is between you and what you really want, the better you can identify this, the better you can form a plan of attack. But again, if all you see is the path between where you are today and what you want to accomplish in the future, but you haven't identified any obstacles, those are going to come up and they're going to surprise you and they're going to stop your momentum in its tracks. A funny thing about the way that we are as human beings is that we operate primarily based on our feelings. And when we feel like we're stopped, when we feel like we slow down in momentum, then it completely erodes our desire to go forward. And so if you don't identify these obstacles and come up with a plan of attack in advance of actually hitting them, they are going to surprise you, they are going to slow your momentum, and most likely they're going to have you turn back. So step 2 in this process is to get clear and write down in your journal for 20 to 25 minutes just on what are the real obstacles right now that are standing between me and ultimately where I want to go. And the third question, and this might be one of the most important questions because what you want in your life is likely hard to get. If it was easy, you'd already have it, and everybody else would already have it as well, but you want something more for yourself than you have right now, which means you're going to have to go through difficulty and pain to go get it. It's easy to set a goal and to feel fired up about it. But then you start to see the enormity of the task in front of you. You start to see all of the obstacles you have to overcome, and you start to instantly doubt yourself that you're going to be able to do it. And as you're going along the path, if you actually take the steps forward and try to execute it, you're going to get to a point where it feels like it's not going to work. I typically call this the trough of despair when we're on the road to transformation. And when you hit the trough of despair, you're going to need to understand why it matters you get what you want now. Now, I know that there's a lot of memes that are talking about like, why is my why? And like, your why should make you cry. And ultimately, I think a lot of those, while good advice, they're misplaced because there isn't a context for it. Understanding a context of why it is that you want this thing that you're trying to go get helps you through the times when it feels like nothing is working and that you're never going to get what you want. Because that is on the other side. See, if your answer to what you want was more money or a better body or more connected relationships, there's a why behind that. There's something beyond the thing. It's not just that thing. You want money so you can go do something. You can buy a bigger house. You can buy a faster car. In which case, I would ask you, why is it that you need that? Why is that important that you get that now? If you want to lose weight, why is that important? Especially, why is it important that you do that now? It might be for your own confidence. Okay, great. Why? Why do you want more confidence? Why do you need more confidence? Same thing when it comes to connected relationships. Like, why does that matter right now? Well, because I want to have a better relationship with my wife, or I want to have a better relationship with my husband, or my kids, or my parents, or whoever. Okay, great. Why? What does that get you? Thinking through, like, what you think is the end point to the next point beyond that is what gets you through the times when you feel like nothing's ever going to work and you're not going to get what you want. So understanding why it matters that you get what you want now is something very critical to get clear on inside of this entire process. I know you might be tempted to just go on and watch the next video, but I'm going to challenge you to not do that today. What I want you to do today is to take the time to answer these questions. You owe it to yourself. You could just watch the next video, which is a zero payoff activity most likely. But understanding something different about yourself by asking yourself questions, high quality questions, will instantly improve the quality of your life a lot faster than you can possibly imagine.